sense this video seems like we're supposed to be talking about what it means to be a site-specific theatre company and all the considerations you have to make. I don't think we intended to be a site-specific theatre company. We kind of started with this idea. We started with the shed and we just wanted to try something, and when we kind of lucked or stumbled into that process, we were fascinated by it and wanted to keep pushing in that direction. So we've continued to seek out spaces that excite us, spaces that have their own stories within them. But being labeled a site-specific theatre company is kind of an interesting thing. There's lots of different ideas of what site-specific means, and we've kind of learned this after the fact because we didn't really know much about those labels beforehand. So there's lots of different versions. There's environmental theatre, which is like you do Midsummer Night's Dream in a forest or Treasure Island on an island, and there's found theatre, which is essentially just using a space that's not traditionally a theatre. There's promenade theatre, which can be anything from like a passion play to, I think, Sleep No More even qualifies under promenade. It's just the audience moves, and so there's all these like intellectual kind of categories for site-specific theatre, but we don't particularly care or need to subscribe to any one of them or look at it from any kind of academic standpoint. We just are really inspired by space, and we like the space to be a character in the story, and we don't think there's any benefit in really kind of boxing ourselves in any one of those things. We just get a lot of creative input from the space, and we like to honor that when we're creating a project.
To add to, I guess, I know like a lot of people that may be watching this video or like, you know, emerging company, or maybe they're thinking about starting a company, but we really didn't settle on like a mandate or mission or what the heck we were doing until, well, we kind of figured it out after we did our first show, and then so that was like one point, you know, in the space. And then we had the Birth of Frankenstein show where we had another, and we're like, okay, we just did two kind of classic stories, and we were never in a real traditional theater venue in either one. So what we were doing has been refined, and now with our new production coming up this fall, Brave New World, we're like, okay, now we have 3 points in space, and we're defining it as we go along. So if you're starting a new theater company, you just, you know, do a show that you want to do in the space you want to do it in, and then, you know, as for us, it emerged as to what our mandate was, what excited us about this particular style of theater.
Yeah, I think like one thing I wanted to bring up is that when we started, we didn't know it at the time, but starting in the shed was a real gift. I think a lot of times you come out, you want to work at the festival like Fringe or Summerworks, or you want to rent a backspace at Tarragon or Factory or Theatre Passe Muraille because those seem affordable and they seem like they would be professional. You'd be under the roof of a professional theatre, but often you're stretching your budget in a way that doesn't necessarily suit you. Like we wanted space that was ours, that we could rehearse in, that we could have control over, and even if it meant working in obviously this ridiculous backyard shed, but it was ours and we could control. We really learned to make it ours instead of at the last minute throwing a show that we've been rehearsing somewhere into a professional venue, and I think that served us well. We didn't do it deliberately, but in hindsight, it's having unique access to a space has become a priority for the company, and I think it's been one of the factors that's been serving us the best.
Question.
Yeah.
So when you guys are like just going around your regular life and you stumble upon a space, do you suddenly like, oh, what show could we do here? Or do you walk into a space, you're like, oh, this is where this show would live? Or is it like you have this show in your brain and you're just kind of like wandering around and then you're like, oh, maybe it could fit here, maybe it could fit there? So is it
Constant.
the space or the play or both?
Yeah. Like we have a long list of, we kind of keep a long list of stories that we've encountered at multiple points in our life, and they kind of hang in the back of our heads. Like I like to think of it as the stories that informed your kind of understanding of the world, and you come back to them. And then we just look for spaces all the time. We love space, so for whatever reason, Like Open Doors Toronto is a great like playground for us. You can just go roam around things. You're always looking at stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like sometimes we'll just email each other or like text each other and go like, I just stumbled upon like around this space. Should really check it out. We send each other photos of them. And do try to keep like a list of all the different locations and stuff where we can think about what could happen.
So one thing that we started to talk about was the idea of working space first as kind of being backwards to the traditional process. I mean, traditional process is either a playwright is commissioned to write, they start with a blank page and they build, they create stuff, they generate. Then designers start with a blank set and they build, they generate, they build a world upon that based on the ideas of the playwright. And what we kind of stumbled into with our shed experiment was the idea of it's almost like it's backwards because you have a full story, Macbeth we started with, and they had a full space, like a full set design. And what it actually ended up being was we were pulling things out, so it was almost like a stripping away. It was a sculpting. It was so the shed. We looked at all the junk in it, and we went, "That's not in the world. That's not in the world." And we kept some things that probably shouldn't have been in the world. There was this amazing stove that Adriano found lots of fun use for in the play, so we had to keep it. There's lots of, what else was there? Like milk crates.
The milk crates. It was a garage shed, right? So the door itself into it was one of those creaky metal ones that when you opened it, and we used that to great effect for big entrances. So, I mean, this is kind of an extension of the space, but it was also, for that particular show, the things that we found in that particular room. So that we decided to keep in there. Which added, I think, to the whole character of both the play and the space.
And so it also applied to the script. Like we have Macbeth, which is probably, I think it's one of Shakespeare's shortest play, but it still probably lands at about 2.5, 3 hours if you did it all. And so working with 4 actors and this tiny space, a lot of the play just no longer made sense. So I talked about it as being kind of the shed acting as like a wood chipper to the script, and you're just like pushing it through and seeing what still remained. And so the space really told me how we were going to tell this with the 3 actors. I mean, 3 actors played the witches and 1 played Macbeth, and the witches played all the other characters. So it really came from the space. And so that was something we didn't go in to do intentionally, but we learned from that first experiment, and we've been applying that to our process kind of going forward. And I love working that way, this sense of like sculpting away rather than having to, I find blank pages and blank black box spaces really kind of intimidating because the opportunities are endless. Whereas if you work with a quirky space, it tells you a lot. It gives you a lot of gifts, gives you a lot of challenges, but it gives you a lot of gifts too.
And that's one of the things, I think, working with constraints. So, I mean, if you were working in the black box theater, you know, the designers might, you know, or the design team might put the constraint of, we're gonna, you know, do this, you know, during early 19th century or something like that. And they put that on. But with us, you know, we enter a space, okay, what does this space tell us about the era? What does this tell us about, you know, are there supernatural elements that feel supernatural to us? Do we feel like we're above ground, below ground? What is the natural lighting coming in telling us about that? So we let those types of things kind of naturally inform our minds, and we make decisions based on that.
One of the things you need is a park permit. So there are all of these different requirements that you have to comply with to get this permit. It includes a waste plan. If you're planning to sell food or beverages, how are you going to get rid of all the garbage? We don't really do that, so it's not an issue for us. But it does involve bathrooms, which is one that we've really struggled with because there are washrooms in Withrow Park, but they close before our show ends. So that's a tricky one we've had to deal with. And this year we're actually renting a porta potty for the first time because at the end of the night, some of our audience members
maybe don't feel like they can make it all the way to the Tim Hortons at Logan and Danforth, and it just feels like if we're inviting people into a space, we should offer them at least the very basic amenities, even if the park can't offer that, which unfortunately, I guess due to just funding cuts, they can't. So, you know, there are all of these logistical things to think about. The other thing is that we have a set and props and lighting. We don't use audio equipment, but we do use lighting because it gets dark by the end of the night. So performing in a park is unlike any other space I've ever performed in. It is full of variables that you can't control, and that are incredibly unpredictable, and that require you to be really present to deal with. And you know, the uncertainty of nature kind of provides that uncertainty that I think a lot of us strive for in the theater. We go to the theater to see something real, to see something that we can't necessarily pinpoint. And so there's a beautiful meshing of those concepts with nature and with this art form of theater. The things that we contend with in this park start with weather, which would be the same as any outdoor space, but it gets much more specific. For example, this week, which is our tech week, there's another company putting on a show in the park. They're doing a dance show, but that means that logistically we are having to share the park with them. And thankfully we have a good relationship with this company, and we've been sharing the park for years, but it makes for a very unconventional and sort of unusual tech schedule. Apart from that, there are animals. The other night we were putting things away, and suddenly we looked into the tree and there were two raccoons, a mummy raccoon and a little baby raccoon, sort of staring at us, wondering when we were going to get out of their park. There are dogs. There's a huge dog park there, so we see dogs and their owners all the time. Our first season we had a dog in the show. We did The Two Gentlemen of Verona, and so we had doggy auditions done through the Withrow Park Dog Society. So, you know, as much as those uncertain elements can be hard to contend with sometimes, the flip side of that is that you get to be in nature, right in the heart of the city. You know, you get to spend a summer surrounded by trees and getting to know your neighbors and seeing, you know, the other day Joan and Chocolate walked by. Joan is the owner, Chocolate is the dog. Chocolate was in our show in 2012, and it was a joyful reunion. I hadn't seen them in a year, since last summer. And so you have all of these added benefits. We have park kids, we like to call them. It's a group of 4 kids. They're all under 5, and they come to the park every day with their caretakers, and they come and watch rehearsals. And we know their names, and they know our names, and they sometimes weigh in on what they're seeing. Our director this year, Megan, has asked them at times what they think is happening to kind of assess the clarity of a moment. And so, you know, we have all of these things that happen that you have to roll with it. And the more you can allow those things to affect and inform the work in a productive way, the more you're being site specific. You know, that's what that means. I mean, we perform here. There's a beautiful path right behind us that every kid learns to bike on. The amount of kids we have seen wipe out on this path is enough to kind of make you want to put training wheels on every bicycle in the world. But we also get to see these kids have these amazing moments of taking a big risk in their lives, and that kind of inspires us as actors and as creators to do the same. You know, the site-specific nature of Withrow Park is also what makes us who we are, because this is where we perform. And so, you know, we have learned to embrace it. It doesn't mean there aren't moments when I want to just build a ceiling and walls and be inside and not have all of these variables. But the more we embrace them, the more everything is lifted. So we try to do that.
And I think that exists on two levels. The first one is that the story really gets you. So for us, we always start with the story, and then through the story we find the location, the casting, everything like that. But it always starts, it's story based.
And I guess like specifically story, and more specifically the script.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's obvious, but like up until Vitals, the work that we did was all
Like American.
American playwrights, stuff that has already been published. So Passion Play, Mr. Marmalade, Terminus, and all not Canadian.
Yeah. So
Vitals.
So Vitals was our first original Canadian production.
That was huge and scary, and it was written by Rosamund Small, who's I think at the time was 21, a 21-year-old playwright, which was so cool.
Yeah. So I think that the first thing was like finding the story and then having everything else shoot out from there. And then the second thing is a hook. Now for us, like the hook is something that's like a challenge that continuously kind of, you know, tickles our fancy. But
also from the producer side, something that will sell tickets.
And it is like hard to do, you know what I mean?
Keep doing this.
So like for instance with Mr. Burns, a post-electric play, we did the show without any electricity from the grid. But you know, as anybody knows, when you have restrictions on you, it creates creativity, right? Frustration.
As the saying goes.
Frustration prolonged begets invention. Right?
So yes. So with Vitals.
That was a little quote there for you.
So with Vitals, I think the hook was twofold.
Mm-hmm.
First it was.
How was it twofold?
First it was. Okay, we're gonna edit some of this. First, I think it was twofold because it was. It was our.
You want me to jump in?
No, not yet.
Go for it.
Well, I don't know if this is a hook, but it was our first new work.
That's a hook.
It was also a one-woman show, which I go an immersive like play. That's a one-woman show. I think that was a bit of a hook as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And we wanted to take people on a 911 call. That's not quite a hook. It is a hook. Take people on like through the day of like a paramedic, through like one house call of a Toronto paramedic.
Yeah. How can we make a tasteful, creative, interesting 911 call that's safe for people? Tasteful, you know, stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like
Totally.
gotta artistically tasteful.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a huge challenge because, you know, we've all watched, you know, dramas and procedural TV that kind of makes it seem really unreal, but we knew that we were having real paramedics coming to see this show.
We did.
And there was kind of a responsibility on the whole team to deliver an artistic, exciting project that was also true to, you know, a lot of the horrors and a lot of the challenges that these people face on a daily basis.
So because we always start with our story, we then have to go about finding a location. And the process has been different for every show. Mm-hmm. Vitals was maybe the most crazy. That's maybe it.
Yeah. They all rival each other in different ways. Yeah.
Yes.
Vitals had its own challenges. So, you know, for instance, Mr. Marmalade, I guess the challenge of that one was the fact that we did it in a kindergarten room. And
in a Catholic school.
In a Catholic, from part of the Catholic school board. So, you know, if you know Mr. Marmalade, you know it's got some pretty adult content in it. Yeah, and like just really dirty talk and stuff. So we had this sort of code. So while we're rehearsing the show, if one of the board members or teachers or custodians ever walked by, we would have this code. We would go, they're here, and then we would switch to a scene that was a bit more family friendly.
Like a tea party scene.
Yes, because we just really didn't want them to shut down the production. Really didn't want them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with Vitals, and I guess we said, like our thought process was, so it's a one-woman show. We want to take our audience. Our thought is, what do we want our audience experience to be? Right?
Yeah.
And in Vitals, we said we want to take them on the journey of one specific paramedic house call. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, we need a house.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, always there's like 50 other possibilities that always come up with any of these shows. So like, it was also the idea to like take people around the city and like go to different places. But we realized that if we did it in one house, then we could transform each of the rooms into a different memory of this woman.
Yeah.
And just keep it more localized.
Yes, right. Simplify, but still creative and true to the script and the story.
Mm-hmm.
So we started off going, okay, how do we get a house? We started looking at rent, like things for rent. We had a crazy idea where we said, let's everyone in the company move in together. So actually get a house and have the 6 of us live in a house, like make it kind of an artist commune, co-op, and then like
kibbutz.
Turn it kibbutz, yeah, because Mitchell's Jewish, and turn it into like and then turn it into the show, and we can all kind of like live there in our bedrooms, like with the sets, and it would be fun.
Yeah.
And even Sebastian's mom, who's
real estate agent,
was looking
was
for
like
us.
looking into it, and we were really thinking